down to what's real and necessary. It sharpens your priorities and hardens your resolve. Under pressure, excuses lose their power and truth takes over. That's when growth becomes inevitable. If you choose to move forward instead of folding inward, pressure doesn't break everyone, but it exposes everyone. It reveals whether you're committed or just interested, disciplined or just motivated. Those who rise don't avoid pain, they learn how to convert it. They turn sleepless nights into preparation, heartbreak into self-respect, and loss into laser focus. Over time, what once hurt becomes the reason they're unrecognizable. Imagine someone who was betrayed by a close friend and left questioning their own judgment. Instead of numbing the pain, they started training harder, learning more, and rebuilding their confidence brick by brick. Months later, they weren't just healed, they were sharper, stronger, and unstoppable. The pain didn't ruin them, it fueled them. Silence becomes powerful when it is chosen, not when it is forced. In moments of rejection, disrespect, or misunderstanding, the instinct is to explain yourself, defend your intentions, or chase validation. But silence, backed by self-respect, communicates strength more clearly than any argument ever could. It says you trust your character enough to let time reveal the truth. When you stop explaining yourself to people who have already decided how they see you, you reclaim your energy and redirect it toward growth. Silence is not weakness, it is restraint. It is the discipline to stay focused while others are distracted by noise. Explanations often fall on ears that aren't listening. When someone doubts you or walks away, no amount of words will suddenly give them clarity. Chasing closure or approval keeps you tied to their perception of you. Silence cuts that tie. It draws a clear boundary and shifts the power den. Amic. Instead of reacting emotionally, you respond strategically by doing nothing outward and everything inward. You work, you build, you sharpen your habits, you let progress speak in a language that cannot be argued with. Silence also protects your momentum. Arguments drain energy, proving drains confidence, and chasing drains dignity. When you stay quiet and disciplined, your actions begin to create distance between who you were and who you are becoming. People expect reactions. They expect explanations. When they don't get them, curiosity replaces control. And when results start appearing, silence transforms into impact. Growth doesn't announce itself early, it arrives finished. Letting your progress speak requires patience. Results take time, and silence tests your ego. You must be comfortable being misunderstood for a season. But that season is temporary. Consistent effort compounds quietly until it reaches a level that forces recognition. At that point, words become unnecessary. Your life answers every question they once asked. Your discipline responds to every doubt they expressed. Imagine someone who was underestimated at work and passed over for opportunities. Instead of complaining or explaining their worth, they stayed silent and focused on mastering their craft. They upgraded their skills, delivered results consistently, and stopped seeking validation. Months later, when a major project needed leadership, the same people who doubted them had no choice but to acknowledge their value. No arguments were made. No explanations were given. The silence spoke through results, and it was undeniable. Outgrowing the version of yourself that others knew is a quiet but powerful transformation. People often build their expectations of you during a phase when you were still learning, experimenting, or struggling. That early version becomes their reference point. They remember your doubts, your mistakes, and the moments when you weren't fully confident yet. But growth doesn't ask for permission, and evolution doesn't wait for approval. When you start changing your habits, sharpening your mindset, and raising your standards, you step into a version of yourself that no longer fits the image they're comfortable with. Some people don't leave because you did something wrong. They leave because you no longer match the role they assigned you. Your growth disrupts their sense of familiarity. It challenges the limits they unconsciously placed on you. When you begin moving with focus and discipline, it forces them to either grow alongside you or step aside. Many choose distance, not out of hate, but out of insecurity or resistance to change. They knew you when you were accessible, uncertain, and still available on their terms. They never experienced you when you became intentional, selective, and self-directed. Outgrowing others doesn't mean you're better than them. It means your priorities shifted. You stopped feeding old patterns and started investing in your future. You learn from your mistakes instead of repeating them. That growth is often invisible in real time. From the outside, it looks sudden, but in reality, it's the result of countless quiet decisions made when no one was watching. By the time results appear, the version of you they remember no longer exists. This is why some people never get to meet the upgraded you. They exited during the construction phase. They judged you mid-process and assumed that was the final product. But growth doesn't pause to correct misconceptions. It keeps moving forward. When you accept this, you stop trying to reintroduce yourself to people who are committed to an outdated image of you. You let your future speak for itself. Imagine a student once known for being average and unfocused. Teachers and classmates labeled them early. After graduation, they disappeared from the scene, worked relentlessly, learned new skills, and built confidence. Years later, their success surprised everyone. Those who only knew the old version never met the disciplined, unstoppable person they became. And that as okay. Arguments feel important in the moment because they are emotional, loud, and immediate. When you're misunderstood, disrespected, or doubted, the urge to defend yourself is strong. You want to correct the narrative, prove your point, and make sure people know your side. But time has a way of shrinking arguments until they become background noise. Words fade, emotions cool, details blur. What remains clear long after the conflict ends is who actually did something with their life and who didn't. Success has a longer memory than any debate. People don't build lasting opinions based on what you said in a heated moment. They build them based on what you achieved over time. You can win an argument and still lose momentum. You can be right and still be stuck. Arguments consume energy without creating progress. Success, on the other hand, requires patience, consistency, and focus. It moves quietly at first, often unnoticed, but once it arrives, it rewrites every old conversation without you having to reopen it. When you choose growth over arguing, you're making a long-term decision instead of a short-term emotional release. Silence paired with action allows you to stay aligned with your goals instead of getting trapped in ego battles. The people who doubted you might never admit they were wrong out loud, but success forces a private realization they can't escape. Results don't need explanations. They don't need witnesses. They stand on their own. Consistency is what gives success its weight. Anyone can talk during a good week. Anyone can argue when emotions are high. But staying disciplined when things are heavy, uncertain, or unfair is rare. That's what people remember. They remember who kept showing up when excuses were available. They remember who stayed steady while others stayed loud. Over time, your actions become your reputation. And your reputation speaks even when you're not in the room. Choosing success over arguments also protects your peace. You stop reliving old conflicts and start investing in a future that doesn't require validation from the past. Instead of proving people wrong with words, you let time do the work. And time always sides with consistency. Imagine someone who was constantly criticized by friends for chasing a difficult career path. Arguments came up often, but eventually they stopped explaining themselves and focused on improving their craft. Years later, their success became undeniable. The arguments were forgotten. The outcome wasn't. Wanting someone to miss you is rooted in the need for validation. It places your emotional center outside yourself and hands it to someone else, hoping their absence will awaken appreciation. But real strength comes when your goal shifts from being missed to being respected, especially by yourself. Being missed is temporary and emotional. Respect is lasting and structural. When you act with self-respect, you stop performing for reactions and start living in alignment with your values. You no longer measure your worth by how often someone thinks about you, but by how consistently you honor who you are becoming. When you chase being missed, you often compromise. You overextend, overexplain, and overstay in places that don't fully value you. That behavior weakens boundaries and teaches others how to treat you. Respect works the opposite way. It's built when you choose dignity over desperation, silence over chasing, and growth over proving. Self-respect means you walk away when something costs you your peace. It means you don't beg for attention or stay where effort is one-sided. This internal shift changes everything because people may ignore words, but they respond to standards. Regret, on the other side, doesn't come from your absence alone. It comes from contrast. When someone sees you moving forward without bitterness, without reaching back, without collapsing, it forces reflection. They realize they lost access to someone grounded, disciplined, and evolving. You didn't need to manipulate emotions or create distance to be missed. You simply respected yourself enough to keep moving. That's what creates weight. That's what lingers. Self-respect also frees you emotionally. You stop waiting for apologies, messages, or signs of remorse. You understand that closure comes from clarity, not contact. Once you respect yourself, whether they miss you or not becomes irrelevant. And ironically, that's often when regret appears, because confidence without attachment is rare and powerful. You didn't try to make them feel your absence. You just made sure you didn't abandon yourself. Imagine someone leaving a relationship where they were undervalued. Instead of posting indirect messages or trying to stay visible, they focused on their health, work, and boundaries. Months later, they were calmer, sharper, and thriving. The other person didn't just miss them. They realized they lost someone who knew their worth, not because of distance, but because of dignity. So keep going, keep building in silence, keep sharpening your mind, your habits, your spirit. Don't look back to see who's watching. Look forward to who you're becoming. One day, they'll realize what they lost, not because you told them, but because your life will show them. And by then, you won't need their regret, because you'll be too busy living the future they never believed you could reach.